It's a part of computer-aided inspection. So how computers are utilized in metrology. So without computers, coordinate measuring machines are not very successful. Okay, so what is the coordinate measuring machine? So I don't know whether we have seen this machine in our lab. So this is a 3-axis coordinate measuring machine. Plus we have some extra axis by rotation of the rope. So short form is called CMM. So basically it determines coordinates of points on the workpiece surface. And then those coordinate data is processed to give results. So for example, you take points on a circle and then you find out which is the best fitting circle. Or of course, if it is only 3 points, it's only one circle. And then that diameter of that circle will be the measurement result. You are interested in the diameter of the hole. Okay, so that's how a coordinate measuring machine is used for measurements. So coming to the history of coordinate measuring machines, one of the first instruments which had a very similar measuring principle was developed by Kaplan Nat Harashov along with Brown and Sharp, a metrology company in the United States, in 1875. So you can see that we have 2 dials. So there are 2 dial gauges fixed to the 2 motions. So it can move up and it can move across. So 2 motions are possible. So you can see Captain is connected with the Navy and he is inspecting the hull of a ship model. So for ships, the hull shape is very important. And when designing the ship, so what we do is we make models and test them. So which profile is best, and then that is implemented on the final fabricated ship. Okay, so to inspect the model, so Captain Nat Harashov developed this, the so-called coordinate measuring machine. So it is not very clear whether the 3rd axis is also available. It may be there. You can see one rod going, so maybe it is a 3-coordinate measuring machine. So that is prehistoric. It's a crude approximation to CMM. But one of the modern CMMs, the first CMM is supposed to be by Mrs. Ferranti Limited of UK. So here you can see Harry Ogden. So he made a CMM in 1956 because his factory, they were facing a big problem. So they were making parts for the defense sector, and the components took only minutes to make in the NC machine. But they wanted 100% inspection. So after the part is made, inspection was taking so many hours. So because of that, there was a huge bottleneck in front of the inspection station. So how can we speed up inspection? So that was Harry Ogden's thought, and he developed a coordinate measuring machine. So, well, there is a contacting point which contacts the workpiece, and that can be automated. The movements can be automated, and the triggering was also automated by him. So that is the first CNC machine. So there is another company which claims that theirs is the first CMM or coordinate measuring machine with air bearings and gunite table. So these 2 facilities were not there in Ogden's machine or Ferranti made. Ferranti is they generally make other machine tools, so they could easily make a measuring machine also. So Russell Shelton, co-founder of EMD Incorporated, they developed this machine which had air bearings and gunite table. So this is the specialty of this machine. Okay, we'll discuss what is air bearings and a gunite table also, so which is very stable. So what is the type of component usually measured in a coordinate measuring machine? So it is well suited for inspecting housing type parts, so which is generally of prismatic shape with a number of holes appearing on it. Okay, so this means on one component itself you have to measure so many dimensions. So if you are measuring individually, each dimension has to be measured in separate measuring units. Whereas in the CMM, all can be measured together, so it becomes very fast. So another example of a component which came to us for inspection when we so this is a drawing which came to us from GE Controls, Bangalore. So they had made a die to make this motor base. Okay, so you can see the number of dimensions. Okay, so this is the small view. So bigger view is like this. So it's very complex. Okay, so such components with a number of dimensions are suited for coordinate measuring machines. So because once you measure some dimensions, from that dimensions you can measure further dimensions. Okay. So what are the parts of a CMM? So fundamentally we can divide into three parts. First is the measurement system, which is the right side. Then the control system, which is in the middle. So just shown as a box, and computer with software. So coordinate measuring machine is actually a measurement system, okay, and which itself has three subsystems: the measurement system, the control system, and computer with software. So how do we measure with the CMM? So to understand the CMM, we should have some basic idea of what is the measurement process. So generally the step starts with inspection or measurement starts with qualification of the stylus. So we are using a stylus to touch the workpiece. So that stylus has a certain diameter. So we have the flexibility to use a variety of styli. So that is why what is the diameter of the stylus that we have to first find out and input to the CMM. So that is done by a stylus qualification process. So we measure a known calibration sphere, and that since we know the diameter of the sphere, we can calculate what will be the diameter of the stylus and the position of the stylus, and that is captured by the CMM. So that's why the measurement process starts with the stylus qualification. So after that, we have to locate the workpiece position in machine coordinates. So there is machine coordinate system is always there. That is the reference scale, the coordinate system from which all the other the basic scales of the instrument are used for measurement. So that is the machine coordinate system. That will never change. Okay, so once you switch on, it will take up some values, it will take up some zero, and that is not going to change. Whereas we are not interested in machine coordinate system. So every time if you get the results in machine coordinate system, then we will have to convert into our workpiece. We are with respect to our piece coordinate system. And we may not be keeping the workpiece always in the same position with regard to the machine coordinate system. We may be keeping at different positions. Then, so it is very convenient if we can convert into a workpiece coordinate system. So we actually do the measurements in the workpiece coordinate system, and internally the machine coordinates are converted into the workpiece coordinate system. So after that coordinate system, the workpiece coordinate system is established, we carry out the measurements. So we take several points on the surface to be measured, and then the geometric parameters of the workpiece are computed. Then, so we would like to know what is the shape of the hole, etc. Is it oval shaped or is it triangular lobed? So to check that, we would like a graphical representation of the results. So these are the main steps in the measurement with CMM. So why or what are the advantages of coordinate metrology compared to conventional metrology? So conventional metrology, we have to align the workpiece with the standard being measured. So for example, gauge blocks. So you have seen for sign bar and all, we have to align. So we keep the workpiece on a surface plate, and the sign bar is also kept on a surface plate, and the bases should be aligned, and then we compare the top surface till they are matching, and then so that it is very time consuming. Whereas in coordinate metrology or coordinate measuring machines, we don't do any alignment. Why? So we are measuring a machine coordinate system, but we convert into workpiece coordinate system. So however the workpiece is oriented, once we define that, we get all the dimensions with respect to the workpiece coordinate system. So alignment is unnecessary. Then conventional metrology, we have different measuring instruments for different jobs. For example, if we have a hole, so to measure the ID of the hole, we need 3-pin micrometer, Border gauge. Okay, we have learned so many instruments. And then, so 3-pin micrometer means its range is very small, say 10 to 12, 12 to 16, 16 to 20, etc. So for each hole, you need a different 3-pin mic. So every different hole, we need a different 3-pin mic. And then to get the distance between two holes, we have to go for another instrument, maybe with using gauge blocks and height master, etc. We can measure the distance between two holes. So it is difficult for changing measuring tasks. So whenever we change the workpiece, it takes, for different tasks, we have to change the instruments. Whereas in case of CMM, the same stylus, once you contact the workpiece surface, you take points on the workpiece surface, we can calculate all the parameters using software. So we don't have to change the instrument. No hardware has to be changed. So in the software, we have to select. So to measure diameter, we select diameter to measure. So once we have measured two diameters, we can simply calculate the distance between two centers, etc. So conventional metrology, we compare with material standards. So that is mainly the gauge block. So our comparison is with respect to gauge blocks or say vernier, etc. So whereas to check whether a part is within tolerance, we have to compare the size obtained with mathematical models. So we have ideal circles, and then we have to compare whether the workpiece is within this mathematical equations. So separate determination of size, form, location, and orientation. So for size, we need a 3-pin mic. For form, roundness, we are seeing the roundness testing instrument. Location, we need another instrument, gauge blocks and all. Orientation, again, some angle measuring instruments. So different instruments are needed for each type of measurement. Whereas in the CMM, so once you probe all the surfaces, you can calculate any of these parameters. So in just one setup, all the dimensions can be measured. And then repeated measurements, we can easily calculate without taking measurements again. So why no alignment is required? So machine coordinate system, the workpiece. So we want the measurements in workpiece coordinate system. So once the relationship between the two is defined, so you define the workpiece with a 3-2-1 system like this, top 3, 2 on the left and 1 on the front side. So then we can convert the coordinate system from machine coordinates to workpiece coordinates CC. So we don't need to align the workpiece. So that's a big advantage of the CMM. So time is saved in the CMM. So what are the different types of CMMs? So based on the arrangement, we identify different types of CMMs. So the most common is the moving bridge type CMM. So here we can see a bridge. So this bridge will move towards us or away from us. So it is supported at right side on guideways. On the left, it is supported the machine table itself. And then over the bridge, we have a ram which moves up and down, and it can also travel, the ram can travel left and right. So we get all three axes. So this is the most common model. So the table is stationary. So the bridge is moving. So what is the problem with this design? So when the bridge moves, ideally both the left and right side should move together. But sometimes if friction is more at one side, then there will be yawing or twisting. Okay, so these things can happen. So that is why that is the major problem with this design. So, however, since there are two columns, so the bridge is supported at both sides. So that is better than the cantilever type CMM where it is supported only on one side. So then the deformations are much more. So here we can see the moving bridge CMM being used to inspect CD molds. So fixed bridge CMM is the most accurate type of CMM. So here the table is moving. So this yawing, twisting problem and all is avoided. Okay, so RAM can move left and right, and it is very rigidly supported on either side by solid pillars, heavy pillars. So whereas the moving bridge type CMM, the pillars, if you make it too heavy, then the energy required for movement will be very high. So, and it will become very slow also. So moving table CMM is the most accurate type of CMM. So the walking problem is totally eliminated, but the disadvantage is its slow speed. So now we have to move the table. The table is a heavy and usually granite table. So moving that is not very fast. So it is very slow. So production speeds, inspection speeds are little lower in the fixed bridge type of CMM, but accuracy is much better. Also, very heavy parts, if you place on the bridge, so it cannot be moved. It may get stuck, etc. What is the maximum weight? There is a limitation. Whereas in moving bridge type CMM, you can place any part because the table is not moving. Whereas here, since the table has to move, the weight can be placed on it is limited. Large footprint. So the total area required. So the table has to move from one side to the other side. So the space requirement will be at least twice that of the table. Whereas in moving bridge type CMM, so table is fixed, only bridge moves. So the space requirement is much less. So we require a larger footprint for moving table or fixed bridge type CMM. So this is the Minolta Ajax 910 illustrated in the photograph. An example of this type of a CMM. Then we have cantilever type CMM. So here the bridge is supported only at one end by another bridge. Okay, and the bridge can move to the left and right, and on it the ram goes up and down, and ram can also move left and right. Okay, one is forward and backward. Okay, so we have a moving cantilever ram. The carrier moves in and out. The table, they don't have any bearing guideways. So whereas in the moving bridge, the table itself acted as a guideway. So that problem is not there. So accessibility is very good. So you can access the workpiece from any point. Whereas in the other case, because of the pillar, there is some difficulty in accessing some positions on the workpiece. So some interference may happen. So that problem is eliminated in this cantilever touching. But the problem is that depending on the position of this carrier, the deformations of the cantilever type beam will change, and then so the error becomes variable. So we cannot easily compensate for it because So that is a problem. So you have to, of course, people have tried error mapping and trying to, depending on every position in the measuring volume, you have to calibrate and then compensate. So it's difficult. So bending of the cantilever causes, so that is the main problem with this design. The accuracy gets reduced because of this bending. And then bending, okay, if it is the same weight, always okay, but we change the stylus, etc., we changes the weight, etc., all that results in uncertainty in the measured coordinates. The systematic error may be changing. Okay, so a simpler version of that is the horizontal arm. So we have only two arms. So whereas the previous one we had one beam also on a bridge. So here there is no bridge, but two cantilever arms are there. So obviously the rigidity is very low, and it is the least accurate among the this Cartesian CMMs. But accessibility is very high. We can access all surfaces of the workpiece easily. So this is the Brown and Sharp eraser, and of course it will be the cheapest because we need much less material for fabricating this CMM. Then we have large CMMs called gantry type CMMs, which are used for inspection of parts like car bodies and all. So sports car and all, it is important that the aerodynamic profile is correctly maintained. So we have such large gantry type CMMs. So this is the alpha of Brown and Sharp, whose size is 2.5 into 5 into 1.5 meter. Then we have the manual CMM. So there used to be a confusion whether this can be treated as a CMM or not. Anyway, currently there is the standard for articulated arm CMM. The technical term is articulated arm CMM. So in the lab we have seen the videos and all. So this is the cheapest type of CMM now. So this is so ours is of course again Brown and Sharp made, but this KJ 2000 is an old model. I took the photo quite long back. So our version is the Roma. So these are the different configurations of coordinate measuring machines. So the coordinate measuring machine is defined as measuring system with the means to move a probing system and capability to determine spatial coordinates on a workpiece surface. Okay, so this is the definition as given in the ISO standard. So it is basically a measuring system. It has the means to move a probing system. It's not very clear whether the means can be manual also. But some system is there to move it. So manual also may be considered a CMM. That's not my understanding. Then it can, so basically its capability is to determine spatial coordinates on a workpiece surface. That is the fundamental function of the CMM. So the probing system is a system consisting of a probe and where present probe extensions, probe changing system, stylus, stylus changing system, and stylus extensions. So in the probing system itself, we have a number of parts. So the ram, which is fixed to the, okay, it moves along the bridge. And on which we keep the probe extension and then the probe. So probe extension and probe together, we can say it is the probe changing system. So we can change the probes. So probe actually controls the measuring force, what force it uses to conduct the workpiece. So you can apply different forces by choosing different probes. And then the stylus is fixed onto the probe. So stylus is the part which contacts the workpiece. So the stylus, you can choose different diameter stylus and all. So that is the stylus tip on a stylus shaft. And then in between you can have extend the length of the stylus tip by having stylus extensions. And the whole thing can be fixed onto a probe, and the stylus part can be changed. So the tip diameter is an important parameter because that defines the smallest diameter that can be measured using this probe system. So shaft and tip together, we call it stylus. And all this together is the stylus system. And probe changing system and stylus system together, you can call it the probing system. Okay, so now we'll discuss the various hardware components of the measurement system. So we can divide into structural elements, bearing systems, drive systems, displacement transducers, and probing system. These are all the main parts of the measurement system. Structural elements are define the structure of the machine. So it consists of the machine base, the table, the gunite table is placed on the machine base and locked. Then the machine columns, slide base, sometimes on the gunite base, and the probe shaft, which moves up and down. So these are the structural parts. Then the bearing system. So the most commonly nowadays we have only air bearings, pneumatic bearings. So air bearings consist of a circular disc through the center of which air at pressure, so P supply is air at a pressure, is delivered to the center of the hole, and from the bottom it escapes through all the sides. So this whole disc is supported on a thin cushion of air, so it is able to withstand a load, F load. So higher the pressure, it can withstand much higher loads. So this is the air bearing system. So aerostatic air bearings. So they are the most commonly used. Nowadays only air bearings are used. Only very old machines you can see with hard bearings. I think in 2000 I visited MIT, Chennai, Chromepet. So there they had, I don't know, it is still there now. So they had a machine with roller bearings. And then sliding guideways. So guideways are usually made on the table itself. So this is the bearing system. Then we have to move the probing system to different parts of the workpiece, and that is accomplished through the drive system. So we can have a variety of drives that are very important. So rack and pinion drive, belt drive, friction drive, wheel screw drive, linear motor drive, etc. all are used. Now we come to the most important part of the measurement system, that is the displacement transducer. So how do we make the measurement? So that is through the displacement transducers. So the most common type of displacement transducer is the transmission scale. So it is basically a glass scale, so through which light can be transmitted. So on the scale are engraved lines like this in the photograph. So with a certain width. Okay, so a lot of lines are there. And if you illuminate from one side, and you can see, so where it is engraved, it is opaque. Where it is not engraved, it will be transparent. So as the light moves, you can count the number of lines you have traversed, and that can be converted into a measurement. So that is the basic way a transmission scale works. Then we have reflection scale. So only difference is that so the scale is a metal scale, so we cannot view it through the scale, but the reflections are monitored. And then interferential scale. So here we view the interference fringes generated by light coming out of two adjacent transparent portions. So between them there is interference, and we measure the movement of interference fringes. So there is a lot of amplification possible, and thus it is much more sensitive. But of course it will be more costly also. So if the source of light for interferential scale is a laser instrument, then it is a laser interferometer scale. So that is also possible. So we have seen laser interferometers are used to calibrate CMs and all. Our machine tools, we have seen how they are being done. So that same scale, that displacement transducer, can be used for measurement in a CMS. So for high accuracy CMS, we have laser interferometric scales. So how the glass scale works is shown in more detail here. So light source, light is reflected by the light diffraction mirror and falls onto the scale. On the other side, we have a scan sensor, and the scan direction, measuring direction. So as it moves along the measuring direction, the number of lines crossed. So glass scale with chromium structure. So there is lines are there on the scale, and the number of lines are counted. The number of lines traversed is counted, and we can get the displacement of the scale. So reflection scale, same way, except that it is not transmitted through the scale, but it is reflected from the scale. So the scale is not glass. So interferential scanning and single phase scanning. So it is reflected from the scale, and the interference happens from after reflection. And of course, the counting is all not manual. It's all through LEDs. They count how many lines are transmitted. They measure the intensities. So brightness increases, decreases. So they determine the minimum, maximum, etc. And then find out how much the displacement is. Then, so linear encoder. So this is basically a sort of an LVDT, is used in some cheap instruments. So rotary encoder is used in manual CMMs, so which are cheap. Okay, so that is about different types of different parts of a CMM. Next, we come to different probes of a CMM. So the probe, we have seen in brief, consists of a stylus system and probing system, probe changing system. So the column is part of the machine. Probe head is part of the probe, which is fixed onto the column. The probe head can be rotated, and the probe is fixed to the probe head. So probe consists of the part where the measuring force is controlled, and to the probe head we attach the stylus extension and stylus. So these are the different parts of the probe system. At the tip we have the stylus tip, circle or sphere. So this is the stylus. So which is the part that makes contact with the workpiece surface. And then we have different types of probes. hard probes, contact probes, switching and continuous types. So hard probes are also contact type, but without any force control, whereas contact probes have some control of the force they apply. And then optical probes. So optical probes, there is no contact. So this is the switching probe system, which was developed by Renishaw of UK, and they had patented it. And so for a long time, nobody else could make it. I think the patents are now expired, and others also started making this. So very interesting design. That's why it's a very robust design. So very, it cannot be damaged easily. So that's the advantage of this switching probe system. So one is a pivot plate. So a triangular plate there. So it has three cylindrical pins projecting out on three corners. So those cylinders rest on spheres. Okay, so the entire pivot plate rests on spheres. So this position is a unique position. It cannot change. So it will always lie in that position only. So now this is forced down using a spring. So 3 is the spring. So when the stylus contacts a workpiece, so one of these cylinders will get lifted. So we measure the resistance through all the spheres and the cylinders. So we have a resistance measuring sensing device. So when the stylus contacts the workpiece, suddenly the resistance will go up. So because there is no contact, so resistance will increase suddenly. So that is used to sense the time of location, when or what is the position of contact with the workpiece. So an electrical circuit is broken by the stylus displacement, which is used to sense the touching of the workpiece. Okay, so the manual probe head. So here, this is the probe. This all together is the probe head. This is next to the carriage of the cylinder. So this part can be rotated about the z-axis, as also about the axis of the stylus. Two rotations possible for this type of probe. So this can be unscrewed and can keep it at any angle. So the manual probe head, the rotation is done manually. Then we have the motorized probe head, where this rotation is done automatically through motor. So it's motorized probe head. So advantage is that whereas the manual probe head, there is no repeatability. So every time you change the position, unlock and lock, so we have to recalibrate the stylus. The stylus has to be redefined. Whereas in motorized probe, there is a certain repeatability. So you can change to different positions and still continue to run without calibrating the stylus. So this is the CMM contacting the probe, contacting the workpiece. So you can see that the stylus can be rotated and need to contact the workpiece at different angles. So here it is an engine block being inspected. See. Right. So as you are seeing, it contacts, every time it makes contact, it captures the coordinates. So-called touch trigger probe. So it touches and a signal triggers capturing of the coordinates. So next we have the contact scanning probe. So this continuously captures data. So it is suitable for profile scanning areas of fine detail. So curved frames like turbine blades, etc. So you can scan continuously. Even gear profile, etc. can be measured using this type of a scan. So this is continuous scanning probe. So it continuously captures data at a certain frequency depending on the capacity of the machine. So first it tells to identify the location. So that it takes some points. Based on that, you can move continuously along the path. The measuring force is adjusted. The position of the probe is adjusted so that the measuring force is constant and compensate for deviation. So this is the contact scanning probe. Then we have other types of probes. So the previous two are the most common. Touch trigger probe is maybe 80% of the machines have a touch trigger probe. And because this contact scanning probe is very costly, a few people have that type of things. Then we have non-contact line laser probe. So there is a visible laser spot and it determines the coordinates based on optical triangulation. So this is suitable for soft materials like rubber, etc. So the measuring force is not there. There is no measuring force applied. Whereas touch trigger probe, there is a certain force applied, although it's small. Then we have microscope probes. So a microscope is attached to the lamp of the CMM, and you have to view through the eyepiece and locate or adjust the position so that it is centered on the target point. So there's a little manual work because not only your eye only has to identify whether it is focused on the this crosswires are at the required position. So for small holes, etc., this is suitable. So for touch trigger probe, the stylus diameter is a limitation for large holes, whereas microscope probe, so it is not going inside, it is just a top. So that's the limitation also. It measures the diameter at the top. For thin specimens, it is maybe. So the CMM becomes a measuring microscope. So the displacement is measured by the CMM. But the point location is manual. Then we have micro touch probe. So this is the comparatively recent development in tutorial. So you can see the stylus tip is 30 micron. So 0.3 mm. And this length is only 2 mm. So this is the tip of this. This whole setup is a probe actually. So this is fixed on this, and this is moved to the machine. So dia 30 micron ball tip, stylus, which is 2 mm long. So this can be 200 probes. So that is another So even we are having so the stylus, because you cannot apply a measuring force and triggering terms of it's difficult to incorporate in such a small stylus. The stylus is made to vibrate. So it's a micro vibrating stylus. And when it contacts the workpiece, the vibration frequency changes. Frequency of amplitude changes. So that is sensed to determine the coordinates at the time of contact. Then vision probe. So microscope probe, you have to look through the eyepiece and make the point coincide with the desired point of the workpiece. So whereas vision probe use the camera, an image of the workpiece is captured, and in the computer you can identify which is the point of interest. So image processing used. Okay, that's our next chapter, machine vision, where we learn how to capture the image and convert it to coordinates. So possible for microgeometry. So small profile dimensions and all can be measured. Deformable workpieces also can be measured. So that's type of vision. Then, so recently, in order to the main purpose of this game is to speed up the inspection, to do the inspection very fast. So many times for surface limit measurement, after dimension measurement, you have to take the workpiece elsewhere to measure the surface limit. So Intuitive has come up with a solution, a roughness probe. So the roughness probe is attached to the arm of the CMM and can be kept at any angle so that the stylus will move parallel to the workpiece surface, and we can measure surface finishes. So if you recall that detector system that even our machine can be moved about. So we need an interface with the probing system. Okay. So that are about the various types of probes. And of course, to speed up inspection, one of the methods is to have an automatic probe changing system. So this is saves time. So there is the rack from which the probe is taken and postponed. This is you don't have to manually intervene. So you can, once you start and program it, it can be continuous. So that's the advantage of that that type of probe changing. So that is about probes. Next we come to control systems. So control systems control the movement of the probe around the workpiece surface. So it is different types of systems are there. So we have the manually driven systems, cheapest. Then motorized CMMs, where you press a button and a motor drives the CMM. But when it reaches the workpiece, you have to stop and move slowly till it contacts the workpiece. So that is motorized CMM. And direct computer control. So this can be, you can give the commands to the computer, and the computer will coordinate the motions. So it will go at a fast speed till just the surface, and then the big distance will move slowly contacts, and the data is captured. So of course for this, then you have to have a system of programming. So how to make the probe move around the piece. So we have also CAD linked control systems. instead of giving commands one by one, you can send the part drawing to the computer, and the computer will generate a program. So software is a very important part of the CMM. So what are the various functions of the software? So first of all, part program. So you have to make the probe move around the workpiece according to the part shape and dimensions to be measured. So for that, we have to program the CMM according to the part. So different methods of programming are available. So first is learn programming. So here you do the inspection once manually, and the commands are stored, and that can be repeated number of times. So that's the easiest way to teach the machine how to do the inspection. So, but of course, the difficulty is that the time of doing it manually, it is very slow. You have to that all the options are considered, etc. So that is the disadvantage of learn programming. So offline programming, you can give the commands on a different PC, and that commands can be then transferred to the PC controlling the CMM, and can do the inspection very fast. Don't lose time for programming the machine. There are simulators and all, which will cross-cut your program. So after that, you can directly take it to the CMM. And of course, CAD-based part programming. So the part drawing is given to the PC, and from that, the software will generate the path to be taken. Then CMM software has the function of evaluation, which again has several parts. So evaluation is the conversion of the coordinate data into various dimensions. So first is qualification. So if you recall the stylus, the point of contact is not the center of the stylus. So in which direction is the stylus contacting the workpiece? So that has to be determined. So the vector has to be found out and the stylus diameter compensated. So that is the first step. So for that, you need to know the position of the stylus and its diameter so that it can be compensated. So to facilitate that, we have the qualification operation. So we have a standard sphere which is measured using the stylus, and then that data can be used to determine the position of the center of the stylus and the diameter of the stylus, so that we can compensate for the stylus diameter at any position in the machine body. Then the second function is transformation. As I recall, one of the major advantages of CMM is that we don't have to align the workpiece with the CMM axis. So we just keep the workpiece in sort of approximate position, that is good enough. Then we probe certain points on the workpiece surface and align the workpiece coordinate system. And you convert, so the measurements actually take place in machine coordinate system, but that is converted into the workpiece coordinate system and so on. So we can get the dimensions with respect to the workpiece coordinate system. So that software is a transformation software. So without which this is etc. Determination profile error, etc. Then even statistical analysis. Repeated measurements can be statistically analyzed, control charts plotted, etc. So all these are possible. So these are all the functions of the software. So the stylus qualification, So we make the stylus contact the calibration sphere at a number of points. So we know the diameter of the sphere. So we can, based on that, we can calculate what is the diameter of the stylus and its position with respect to the displacement transversal. So where is it located now? So that next time the stylus diameter or center has to be taken to different positions. So the position of the radius of the stylus is determined and its position with respect to the displacement distances. We contact 4 points to get the approximate center. It's a continuous scanning probe. It continuously captures the data. So that is stylus qualification. So after that, CMM measures the coordinates and then based on the stylus position, it compensates for the direction of contact and gives the surface coordinates. That is one part. So after obtaining the surface coordinates of the workpiece, then we have to do various calculations. So, okay, the first is stylus compensation. So, for the simple case of length measurement, is very simple. So, if this is the, so what we are actually measuring is the distance from this stylus center to this stylus center. So, after that, so we know the diameter of the stylus, so that has to be subtracted with the measured length to get the workpiece length. Then, determining, say, diameter. So if you have only 3 points, it is quite simple. But if you take a large number of points, then you need some criteria for fitting. So mentioned in the GD&T plus, we have different criteria: least square circle, minimum zone circle, then maximum inscribed circle, and minimum circumscribing circle. So circle can be various criteria. Okay, so just to illustrate how the CMM works, for better understanding of the working of the CMM, circle for the coordinates. So how do we determine the circle given its coordinates? So find the circle passing through the points. Okay, so this is the query. That's one way of 3 points. 3 points for more points. Okay, this can be extended using the regression or minimum zone circle fitting, etc. So we have to find out the center and diameter from the radius. So coordinates. So I used to give different coordinates for each student. Now, of course, you can get it in this circle. So the equation of the circle. So is x square plus y square plus 2gx plus 2f plus c equal to 0. And each of the 3 points will pass through this circle. So it should be, these 3 equations should be satisfied. So we can rewrite this in matrix form. Okay, so x square plus y square is equal to x side. And this is the, take the GFC out. So GFC equal to, so G, F, and C are the parameters of the circle. Yes. This inverse of this 2x1, 2y1, 2x1, 2y1, 1, etc. Inverse of that matrix into minus x square minus y1 square. So all this x1, y1, etc., x2, y2, x3, y3 are known. So we can calculate this, and this is a number, and we get a matrix on the right side. So we can get G, F, and C. So the center of the circle is minus G minus F, and radius of the circle is root of G square plus F square minus C. So now how do we determine what is the uncertainty x0, y0, and r? So that is another problem. So we can use Monte Carlo simulation to estimate the uncertainty of these constants determined. Okay, so that is computation part. Then specifications of a typical CMM, right? So this is a recent model, Vista Apex S544. The maximum measuring speed is 8 millimeter per second. Resolution is 0.1 micron. And then that is with the maximum permissible error is with TP20 probe. Bishop's famous probe. So the maximum permissible is 2.2 plus 4L by 1000. So 2.2 is sort of a constant irrespective of length. So that is the uncertainty of the probe. And then the distance moved is proportional to L. So L is the length moved. So that is 4L by 1000 micron. So this is if the temperature maintained between 16 to 26 degrees Celsius, this is the accuracy achieved. So you can see that the accuracy is minimum 2.2 micron. So even if L is 0, uncertainty of plus minus 2.2, not uncertainty, is maximum permissible. The maximum error of plus or minus 2.2, again, I think this is 95% accuracy. So 2.22 micron is only the accuracy of the CMM. So whereas, for gauge blocks and all, the length accuracy is of the order of nanometers. Okay? And even laser, the same order. Short lengths, gauge block will be better. Long lengths, interferometer. So CMM is not a very accurate instrument, but the advantage is that complex components can be measured very fast. Okay? So I don't know, for what happens is that every time I have to explain this to students. So students, for their projects and all, they want to take some measurements. Immediately they say they want a CMM. So we cannot hand over the CMM to you so easily. And so we have to get involved. So that's why we try to limit ourselves. Only if it's not possible, we use the CMM for measurements. So, and the accuracy is not that good, as you can see. So, with gauge block and other devices, we can get even dial gauge or 1 micron dial gauge has better accuracy than this. So this is 2.2 micron is the minimum with the 0 dimension, and with L increasing, uncertainty increases. Okay, so the difficulty is that you have to control the thermal environment. So maintaining the temperature all around the CMM is very difficult. So that is one of the problems achieving higher accuracies with the CMM. Okay, so applications of CMM. So simplest is discrete point sensing for control of part dimensions. So measure dimensions of the parts. Then digitizing for copying and reverse engineering. So you have unknown shapes and all. You can take large number of points and then do reverse engineering. So you can fit surfaces and that can be converted to a design. And then you can fabricate. So of course now there are better methods. Long time back we have done some projects like that. So we copied a product and created a design. Then scanning to measure form and profiles. So roundness, it can be scanned, but the accuracy is not that good as a roundness tester. Most of the stuff also has accuracy of nanometer level, whereas CMM accuracy is only 2 micron. Is what we have to go for high accuracy. Moving table type workers, that will be more accurate. So CMMs, but the main advantage of the CMM is that it is very flexible. It can be used for a variety of jobs, and companies are getting more and more options. So we have seen how even surface workers can be measured, a probe can be attached to a CMM. That can also be done on the CMM. You don't need to have a moving table or platform to measure roughness. That also can be done in the CMM. So that's why it has become